afternoon and welcome back to the Analyst of Vajiram and Ravi, where we bring to you detailed discussion of important articles from both the Hindu and Indian Express. So today is 28th of December, and what are the important articles? Let's have a look. So amid the rising civilian and defense casualties in the Jammu and Kashmir that we have already covered before, the Home Minister has decided that a particular association will be declared as an unlawful association under a particular act. This act is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act of 1967. What are the underlying provisions and what is the assessment? We will have a thorough look on that. Then in the second article, we will read about a gas, the ammonia gas, which is recently leaked from a fertilizer plant in the Ennore district of Tamil Nadu, thereby causing havoc among the civilians. Next, we will read about the Japan's moon lander mission, which is also a counterpart to Chandrayaan 3. This is SLIM mission. So we will see how it is comparable to the Chandrayaan mission of India. Then from prelims point of view, we will be covering two very important topics. First is we will have assessment of what are the non-performing assets of a bank. Why is it in news? Because RBI in its recent report has showcased that the NPAs have been on a decadal low, and this is a good news for the Indian economy, thereby calling upon the assessment of NPAs. And finally, we will read about a very important government scheme which aims to provide financial incentives, income support to our farmers. This is Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. So let's have a detailed discussion and let's start with the first topic. So first of all, beginning with the very context. The context is that recently, Ministry of Home Affairs, kindly remember the ministry, this ministry has declared a particular faction of Hurriyat, which is a Islamic separatist group, that is the Muslim League of Jammu and Kashmir, which was led by Masarat Alam. It has been declared as an unlawful association under the Anti-Terror Law of India, that is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act 1967, and it has been detained for 5 years. Now, why are we reading about this? Because first of all, it deals with ensuring security of the nation, which is a part of GS3, and also what government has done to make sure that we are secure. That is government policies and interventions which are dealt in the GS2 part of the syllabus. So we will read about this particular topic in detail now. So first of all, when we are talking about the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act, what does this legislation aims to do? This legislation aims to create an anti-terror atmosphere in the country, a secure atmosphere in the country, and therefore it is the primary anti-terror law of the India, which aims at penalizing the unlawful activities that can threaten the sovereignty and the integrity, security of the country. So this is the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act. The keyword over here is unlawful activities. So what do we mean by and what entails in the unlawful activities definition? Before studying that, let's first understand the background of the inception of this act so that we understand how the definition of unlawful activities got eventually broadened. So first of all, the background lies in the decade of 1960s. So at that time, many insurgencies started happening in local pockets across India. We saw many separatist groups, separatist movements, secessionist demands, etc. So the central government was already having the idea of having an anti-terror law, an anti-separatist law in the country. But they got triggered by the 1967 event where the Naxal Bari insurgency of Bihar, which led to the emergence of Naxalism in India, which led to terrorism in India in the internal domains of the country, that led to the creation of an ordinance, the promulgation of an immediate ordinance by the president, which was named as the Unlawful Activities Prevention Ordinance. Eventually, it was converted into the Act with the help of Parliament. So now we finally have our Act of 1967. Now, essentially, in the beginning, because it emerged as a reaction to the secessionist demands or the separatist demands. Therefore, initially it only wanted to cater to these two things only. That is a threat that is coming from the separatist movements and the secessionist movements. It was not including terror back then. But then came the amendment of 2004. From thereupon, the terrorism also got included in the definition of unlawful activities. So now, the final definition of unlawful activities would include not only not only supporting or providing aid to the secessionist or separatist tendencies, but also supporting terrorism by aiding and abating the terrorist, by funding the terrorist. Also, it includes inciting anti-national feeling among the masses, and also it includes other unlawful activities against the state. Now, can you see that this definition has got very much broadened and also has got some arbitrary elements to it, which can lead to misuse of the definition as well. Therefore, it is also considered as one among the draconian laws because of the large vagueness and arbitrariness and the scope of the definition. Now, coming back to the faction which recently got declared as unlawful association, and why so? So this is Muslim League of Jammu and Kashmir. This is one among the faction of Hurriyat. So in the previous discussion of Analyst of dated 22nd of December, we have read that the Muslim United Front in 1980s, after getting defeated from the election, got converted into a militant group, and that militant group has now largely taken the form of Hurriyat. And this militant group has got multiple factions. The one which is led by Alam or Masarat Alam is known as Muslim League of Jammu and Kashmir, and this was a separatist organization established in 1993. And why is it declared as unlawful association? Because it has been involved in funding and aiding the terrorist activities in the grounds of Jammu and Kashmir. They have been enticing people to establish the Islamic rule as well, thereby also promoting the secessionist tendencies in Jammu and Kashmir. Therefore, under Section 3, Clause 3 of UAPA Act, it has been detained for 5 years. Now, this particular law is considered as one of the toughest terror laws across the world, also entailing some of the draconian provision. Let's have a detailed look on that. What are the key provisions of this law? First of all, it defines the unlawful activity. So unlawful activities now, before 2004, what was unlawful activity? Anything which can lead to secession of the territory of India, or anything which can support or incite these activities. What that is, the separatist or the secessionist activities. But after 2004, it got more broadened, and now disrespecting the sovereignty and questioning the integrity of India is now also included under the ambit of unlawful activities. So first of all, it defines what is unlawful activities, which is rather vague. Next, it widens the power of central government to a huge extent. First of all, it led to formation of NIA, that is National Investigation Agency, which is the premier anti-terror law enforcement organization, which was established in 2008. Why was it established? In response to the Mumbai terror attack that happened in the same year. So in order to have a proper coordination and institutionalized framework to deal with the terror activities, NIA was formed, and this NIA is given the power to investigate and prosecute the cases. So who does the prosecution in the case of UAPA? It is the NIA. But then who identifies, who designates? It is the central government, that too the Ministry of Home Affairs. The other power that is given to central government is with regards to identification. So before 2019, Center had the power to designate any organization as an unlawful organization. But after the 2019 amendment, central government also got the power to designate any person, not only the organization but also any person, as a terrorist. So this was done in the 2019 amendment, enlarging the power of central government. Finally, Section 45 says, and this is one among the draconian provisions, that no court can take cognizance of any offence without the prior approval or prior permission from the central government. So everything here starts with central government. Central government is given huge discretion upon the rollout of this particular act. Next is, what about the applicability? It has got widespread applicability. It is not only applicable within the frontiers of India but also outside the India. It can not only be imposed on the Indian nationals but also on the foreigners. So it has got wide applicability without any exception. Next is, what about the timeline? This is again one of the controversial provisions, and very much so. First of all, it says that there will be detention without trial for whom the suspects or the accused, they have not been proven guilty by court yet. Mind you, these are only the suspects or the accused, and they will be detained without trials for up to 6 months, that is 180 days. Next, They will not be getting anticipatory bail as well. They will be denied of the bail unless the court is satisfied that they are not guilty. So here the burden of proof is on the accused, and this is against the principle of the criminal law, where the burden of proof is on the prosecution and not the accused. So here also, therefore, because of this reason, this feature is little controversial. And finally, about the punishments, it has got grave punishments provision. First of all, it gives death penalty in the cases of terrorist activities. If anybody is convicted of terrorist activities, and if anybody is convicted of any other activity other than the terrorist activities, for example, inciting secessionist or separatist tendencies, etc., then he will be liable for a maximum punishment of life imprisonment. So the penalties are also very, very severe. Now, the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act will be executed by special court so that it can have speedy trials and also dedicated trials. So it is dealt by special courts. Okay. Now let's have assessment of this particular act. There will be some arguments for and some arguments against. Let's talk about what are the good things, what are the good provisions of this act. First and foremost, it takes care of the terrorist activities. So it ensures that we can have a very strong counter-terrorism mechanism or framework against the activities which can threaten the sovereignty and security of our nation, of our civilians, of our people. So first of all, it ensures that we have a very strong counter-terrorist or counter-terrorism framework, which is also in line with India's commitment of the global terrorism action. So it also ensures that India complies with the international commitment. It also ensures that trans-border crimes or the cross-border crimes will also not take place, or will be stopped, or will be prevented at least because of the laws like this. And second, it empowers or gives tools and teeth to the law enforcement agencies. First of all, to designate who are the unlawful terrorists, or who are the unlawful activities, or who are the unlawful organizations. And second, it also helps them to prosecute. Who will prosecute? The NIA. So for example, Ajmal Kasab, who was responsible for the Mumbai terror attack, was prosecuted under this particular act only. And the other terrorist organizations like Jaish-e-Mohammed, Lashkar-e-Taiba, etc., Dawood Ibrahim, all of them have been designated as the unlawful activities or the unlawful people under this particular act only. So this is about having a strong counter-terrorism framework for us. Second, it ensures that we ensure some preventive measures as well before the act takes place. So preventive detention provisions are also there. For example, an activist, Safura Zargar, was arrested under this particular act in the form of preventive detention, as it was said that she was a part of conspiracy to cause communal violence in Delhi back in 2020. So it also takes some of the preventive detention measures. And finally, it ensures the national security of the country, because it has got not only preventive provisions but also penalizing provisions, finally ensuring that the people of the country are safe and secure. But the particular act which was initially made to ensure or safeguard the security turned into a form, or turned into a tool to take away the free speech or the power of dissent that was constitutionally guaranteed to the people of India. So therefore, it has now been converted also into a draconian law. What are the arguments against? First and foremost, it curtails the very fundamental rights that are guaranteed by the Constitution. For example, right to equality, right to freedom of speech, and also your right to life and liberty, by exercising provisions like detention without trial, and also arresting anyone under the huge and broad and vague definition of unlawful activities. So therefore, it also impinges on Article 14, Article 19, Article 21, that is guaranteed to Indian citizens by the Indian Constitution. And also, it has got indefinite definition and indefinite discretion of the central government, which can also lead to abuse and misuse of power. Next is issue of the bail. First of all, no anticipatory bail is guaranteed, and second, there is detention without bail as well, leading to in many instances that a person who is just accused, not even found guilty, ends up being in trial for more than 1 year of his life. So these are some of the issues of the bail related provisions of UAPA. Next is the unfortunate low conviction rate. A lot of cases that have been registered, out of them only 2.2% have got convicted so far, as per a report or data published by Ministry of Home Affairs. So this is a very glaring situation where at such a low conviction rate, you are impinging upon human rights of so many people. And it also has provision of presumed guilty. Here, the person who's accused is already considered as guilty. So here the burden of proof is not on the prosecution, it is on the accused only. And finally, it is against the very federal structure of the Indian constitution, because law and order also comes under the state list. And state government in this particular act or in this particular legislation has got about nil powers to exercise the law and order when UAP is imposed and it is taken under control by the central government. So then what can be the way forward to ensure that there is a balance between the security and the civil liberties? First of all, we need to narrow down the definition. We need to cut down the arbitrariness and the vagueness in the wide interpretation of the definition. Unlawful activities, terrorist acts, and what is the discretion of central government all should be specifically defined, so that constitutionally protected activities, for example, having peaceful protest, rightful dissents, all of them are not discouraged in a healthy functional democracy. This was also reiterated by Supreme Court in its Maqbool Fida Hussain judgment of 2008. Next, we have to shift the burden of proof on to the prosecution and not to the guilty in this particular, or not to the accused in this case. And finally, we need to set up an impartial and independent review mechanism against the actions that are taken by the central government. This will finally ensure that we are striking a good balance between ensuring the safeguarded security of the country and also ensuring the fundamental rights, the civil liberties of the people. So this was about this legislation. Coming to the next topic, here we are going to talk about an industrial gas leakage disaster whereby a fertilizer plant has led to several people being hospitalized due to the ammonia gas being leaked from it in its fertilizer manufacturing unit, where in the Ennore district of North Chennai. Now, in this particular case, we have to read about the ammonia gas. What is its significance? Because UPSC can ask about a gas, its qualities, and then will make you question or will make you pick among different gases. So let's get clarity first of all about this toxic gas called ammonia. So first of all, what happened in this particular accident? Let's have a look. So this gas leaked in a pipeline, in a water pipeline, also known as a subsea pipeline, that was installed by the Coromandel International Limited. This company is responsible for production of a particular fertilizer known as ammonium phosphate potash sulfate. Because it was a fertilizer company, it also used ammonia in its production, in its input, and therefore due to the accident or due to this negligence, it has led to leakage of ammonia, that is NH3 gas. Now eventually about 2090 micrograms per volume has been emitted in the ambient air atmosphere after this leakage, which is 4 times more than the average or the safe standards that are permitted by the CPCB, the Central Pollution Control Board. So safe levels of ammonia is 400 micrograms per meter cube, and here in this particular accident it got up to 4 times more. Now a question for you, that CPCB is taking care of the pollution, but which legislation led to the creation of the Central Pollution Control Board? Because we need to be conceptually cleared on environmental legislations as well. So this is a question for you. Do kindly answer this. Now let's bring our discussion to the ammonia gas. Ammonia gas, also designated as NH3, it has got bonds of nitrogen and hydrogen. Now ammonia is basically a colorless gas. It does not have any color, but it has got very strong odor. It has got very pungent odor. Now this gas is also lighter than air. So while all of the air subsides, this is one among the gas which causes most of the menace because of its spreadability, because it is very, very lightweight. Next, it is highly reactive and it is soluble and forms alkaline solution. So it is alkaline in nature. Why do we say this? Because when it is reacted with water, when ammonia is reacted with water, it gives NH4OH. That is ammonium hydroxide. Now let's talk about its mode of production. So first of all, it can be categorized into 2 parts. It can be naturally produced in the nature, by the nature, and also by the industries through commercial processes. Talking about the nature, it first of all can be prevalent in the soil, because see, anytime you get any decayed organic material in the form of animal waste or plant waste or decayed material, all of that will be having degrading proteins in them. Degrading proteins, see, our body is made up of proteins, that is the building block of the body, which is eventually made up of units called amino acids. These amino acids have got key building component called nitrogen. So whenever decaying happens, the protein also starts getting destroyed, and therefore the amino acid breakdown starts happening, and it leads to creation of ammonia by the process of ammonification by the soil bacteria. So therefore it is present in soil, and it is produced by the soil bacteria or the ammonifying bacteria. Then second, it can be created anywhere the decomposition of the organic matter happens, and therefore we get to feel a very pungent smell whenever we find any decaying matter. Then it can also be created by the bacteria present in the intestine, which is again trying to decompose the processed material, the organic material collected in the intestines or in the stomach. And it also takes place when the lightning strikes. Why? Because we have got nitrogen in the air in the free form, and also the hydrogen gas. So whenever a huge spark comes, it leads to ignition of these two gases, eventually leads to creation of ammonia. So this is how in the natural processes ammonia is formed. Next, the commercial process. The commercial process is known as Haber's process. Haber's process is again nothing. When you take any kind of hydrocarbon, essentially either coal or either methane gas, and then you take the methane gas and you hydrolyze it. Therefore, it is known as steam methane reforming. You are using steam over here with high energy. This eventually leads to carbon dioxide and hydrogen gas. Now, since you know that nitrogen gas is readily available in the atmosphere because it is rather inert, it is not reactive, but hydrogen is very reactive, difficult to produce. So now you have produced the hydrogen gas. Now you will react it with the nitrogen gas present in the atmosphere, and finally it leads to creation of ammonia. And this process is known as the Haber's process. So this question can also come not only in the state PCS but also in the UPSC exam. So I hope you are mindful of it now. Now, what are the ammonias used and how is it a pollutant? So the first thing is, ammonia has got huge use or huge utility in the fertilizer industry because the fertilizers mainly are composed of nitrogen, phosphorus and potassium. Nitrogen being a very important building block for the plants because it not only helps and aids the formation of chlorophyll in the plants, but it also helps or is actually the protein building block of the plants or of the animals as well. So therefore, fertilizers can be built using ammonia, which eventually gives nitrogen. Why are we not using direct nitrogen? Why are we not using N2 gas directly? Because N2 gas is inert in nature. It is not readily reactive, not readily decomposable as compared to ammonia. Ammonia can be decomposed into N2 gas and H2 very easily. Therefore, it is used as fertilizer and not the N2 gas directly from the atmosphere. So a particular fertilizer is urea, which is most prevalently used. Now you know that whenever the color of leaves decolorizes, whenever it turns yellow, that is because of the lack of nitrogen in it. Therefore, it is supplied with urea because it has got nitrogen. Then it is also used as bleaching agents and also disinfectants or cleaners. Next, because it helps in reducing, it takes away the oxygen and it helps in reducing. Then it also helps in manufacture of explosives. It also acts as a very good refrigerant and coolant because it has a wide temperature range. It can also operate in very low temperatures, for example, the refrigerant, and also in very high temperatures, for example, coolants like ACs. And it also absorbs the heat very quickly. And therefore, these are some of the wide uses of ammonia. But it also acts as a pollutant because after a threshold limit, it is harmful not only for the life around us, but also for the plants, but also for the pollution, but also for the ecosystem largely. So, first of all, it is a huge emission source across multiple sectors. It's not only coming from the agricultural waste, burning of agriculture, and from the animal husbandry waste, etc., but also coming from industrial exhausts, vehicular emissions, volatilization of soils and oceans, which have got huge amount of nitrogen fixed into them, stored into them. What are the harmful effects? It has got harmful effect on all the aspects of ecosystem. First of all, on the water, it causes eutrophication, that is growth of nutrition, growth of nutrients, because of which the oxygen supply of the living biota increases. Therefore, the oxygen that is required for the marine organisms, which are beneficial, which are very important part of marine ecosystem, that oxygen supply gets limited. Therefore, it raises the oxygen demand from the biological life. Therefore, the biological oxygen demand, or the BOD, increases with eutrophication. This is how it pollutes the water. Then it also pollutes the soil, because excessive urea leads to soil acidification, because it has got a component of nitrogen, and nitrogen can also create nitric acid, leading to acidification of soil. Then it can also lead to accidents, because as we know that it can absorb the heat very quickly. So if you have got containers which are exposed to huge amount of heat or fire, they may lead to violent rupturing over the time. So it can also lead to gas leakages and industrial disasters. It can also be a toxic gas, because it can threaten the life not only of the plants, animals, but also humans. It can also cause respiratory tract irritation, numbness, also irritation in the eyes, etc. And overdose can also lead to death. So this is about some of the uses and how is it a pollutant. Now a question for you. Is ammonia considered as a pollutant in any of the pollution measuring index of India? We have got two. One is National Air Quality Index, NAQI, and second is SAFAR. So is ammonia a part of any of two? Just let me know. Then finally, we can have a quick look on the multiple gas leaks that have happened in the past. To begin with, in 1984, the most disastrous tragedy that happened in Bhopal. So Bhopal gas tragedy, which took place around December only in 1984. Here, a pesticide plant was defunct, and it led to release of a gas called methyl isocyanate. Kindly remember the name of this gas. It led to killing of nearly 5,000 people. Then there was a Gale pipeline blast. This was near Andhra Pradesh, and here natural gas or the methane gas got leaked. In the Bhilai steel plant, again methane gas got leaked. In the Kanpur ammonia gas leak case of 2017, ammonia gas was again leaked in the Kanpur district of Uttar Pradesh. In Belur of Karnataka, a chlorine gas was leaked in the year 2017, and Bhilai steel plant, explosion of a gas connected to coke oven section led to evacuation of methane in large amount. So that happened in 2018, and in very recent time in Andhra Pradesh, in Visakhapatnam, styrene gas got leaked. And styrene gas is basically phenylethene and vinyl benzene, which is known for causing cancers, and also it leads to certain central nervous system ailments as well. So these are some of the gas leaks that you can quote in your mains answer whenever you want to talk about any industrial disaster in India. Now, talking about the third topic, this is the Japan's counterpart of Chandrayaan. This is SLIM, or Smart Lander for investigating the moon. Japan's SLIM. This is a spacecraft which is in news because it got launched in September 17. In September 17, it was launched. Then finally, in December 25, it entered into the orbit. As you can see, it took quite a lot of time to enter. About 4 months it took, as compared to Chandrayaan 3, which entered just in about 1 month. So it entered in 25 December, and finally it is said that on 17th or 19th January around, it will be doing its landing, moon landing. So this is the timeline of Japan's SLIM. Who has developed this spacecraft? This is the Japan Space Agency, which is JAXA, Japan Aerospace Exploration Association. So this potentially makes Japan the 5th country to try to have a soft land on the moon, because the first attempt of Japan, just like India, was a fail. So therefore, let's see if it becomes the 5th country to have a soft landing or not. Now let's quickly talk about some of the features of Japan's SLIM and how is it comparable with Chandrayaan. The most unique feature is its light weight. It only weighs, the whole spacecraft weighs only about 500 kgs, which is up to 1/7 of the weight of Chandrayaan, which weighed about 3500 kgs, and rightfully so, because it carried many landers, rover, many components like lander, rover, etc., and also multiple payloads inside them. We will be having a look on them. But first of all is the very light weight of SLIM. That is because of two things. First, because it is not containing that much fuel that Chandrayaan used. So first of all, it is very fuel efficient. It is using minimal fuel. And second, because it is not carrying that much payload, so it has got less payloads as compared to Chandrayaan. The second comparable is that while Chandrayaan reached the lunar orbit in just about 1 month, this is taking more longer time. Why? Because of the fuel efficiency. While the fuel is efficient, still, in order to bring the fuel efficiency, they took the longer path as compared to Chandrayaan 3. And therefore, it took longer time for SLIM as compared to Chandrayaan 3 to reach the orbit. Then, where is it set to land? It is set to land again in the South Pole, just as where Chandrayaan did. So Chandrayaan 3 actually landed between two craters, between the Manzinus crater and the Boguslawski crater. And between these two, Chandrayaan 3 entered. It didn't enter on a particular crater, but SLIM is going to enter or land on or near the Scioli crater. It aims for unprecedented precision landing within 100 meters. This is also known as the precision landing, or the maneuvered control landing is also known as soft landing. So it aims to do soft landing as well. It will be aided by the data from the Japan's Selene orbiter. Selene orbiter was launched around the moon's orbit by the previous mission, by the previous SLIM mission, just as how Chandrayaan 2 orbiter is helping Chandrayaan 3 mission. And it also deploys small rover on the surface for the surface analysis of moon. It will be launched along with XRISM. What is XRISM? This is very important from prelims point of view. This is basically an X-ray telescope, which should be launched as a joint collaboration between the JAXA, the USA's NASA, European Space Agency and Canadian Space Agency. It has got no role of ISRO, you must remember this. It is there to observe the X-rays, have a deep study and understand and identify the multiple wavelengths with detailed precision. So these two missions, the XRISM and SLIM, were launched together at the same time on board the same spacecraft. Then SLIM's success or failure is important for India because it will further decide whether we will take part in the LUPIX mission or not. LUPIX mission is a contemplated mission between JAXA and ISRO, where they'll be trying to move more further towards the South Pole in order to have more precision readings or observations of the South Pole of Moon. And it is contemplated to be launched in 2026, but the success, it is dependent on the success of SLIM mission. Now let's quickly talk about Chandrayaan 3. So Chandrayaan 3 was launched on July 14th, 2023, and it was on board this launching vehicle GSLV Mark III, which is also now renamed as the launching vehicle M3-M4, and it had got 3 modules in it. One was the lander and rover module, and the next one was propulsion module. Propulsion module was responsible for maneuvering it, for providing soft landing. Lander landed on it, and it had multiple payloads, and a rover module, which is basically a bot which moves across the area, the designated area, the targeted area of the moon for observation. What was the lifespan of this mission? The lifespan is 1 lunar day. 1 lunar day is not same as 1 Earth day. It is about 14 days, 14 Earth days comprises of 1 lunar day. For 14 Earth days, it will be, or it has been maneuvering around the moon. Now, what are the different payloads? To have a more detailed view of this infographic, you can kindly have perusal of the handout that is provided in the description box below. So there are three kind of components. There is lander, there is propulsion module, there is rover module, etc. They are having particular payloads. Payloads are those instruments which are constructed in order to have or in order to perform a particular task only. So for understanding the plasma, the atmosphere of plasma on the moon, there is Rambha payload, which is very important for you to remember. CHASTE was responsible for carrying out the measurement of the thermal properties of the lunar surface. For understanding the seismicity and the vulnerability of the lunar area for seismic waves, there was ILSA, instrument for lunar seismic activity. Then the rover payload has got alpha particle X-ray spectrometer, and laser-induced breakdown spectroscope, which is to eventually understand the composition and enhance our understanding of the lunar surface. And finally, the propulsion module, responsible for soft landing, had shape payload, responsible for studying the spectropolarimetry to understand the signatures of the habitable planet Earth in the NIR region, that is to study essentially the Earth. Coming to the next topic, this is non-performing assets and its trend. So recently a report named as The Trend and Progress of Banking in India report published by RBI has highlighted that the gross non-performing assets ratio of the Indian scheduled commercial banks have hit a record low in the last decadal year, going to a record low of 3.2%. So what is first of all this gross non-performing asset ratio? It stands for what is the total amount of non-performing assets upon the total assets with a bank. And the lesser this ratio is, the better is the performance or the resilience of this bank and eventually of the Indian economy. Now these trends are very important. These trends are very important because UPSC in its PYQ have been asking question on the trends of economy. So you can have a look from this question. Say, with reference to governance of public sector banking in India, consider the following. The very first option will showcase a trend that capital infusion into public sector banks by the government of India has steadily increased in the last decade. And in this particular question, you can see that it has been decreasing. It has been decreasing and it has decreased to a fresh decadal low in the last 10 years. So it has been lowest in the year 2023. Now, first of all, when we want to talk about non-performing assets, let's quickly talk about what are the assets and liabilities with the bank. So clearly, if a bank owes you something, it is liability of the bank because end of the day, bank has to give you the money that you have deposited with them. For example, any kind of time deposit, like for example FDs, fixed deposits, etc., recurring deposits, or any other deposits like current account, saving account, all of them will be having some interest that you will be paid by the bank. Therefore, it is a liability for the bank. What are the assets of the bank? That the bank essentially owns and it is going to be with the bank. For example, the reserves, the cash and gold and the securities that are there with the bank. Secondly, the loans that the bank create, because when a bank is giving loan to somebody, for example, if bank is giving loan to Kingfisher Airlines at a rate of 10% interest, then the bank will first of all be paying some principal amount of loan to them. When they have to return not only the principal amount but also the interest rate, the interest amount. And therefore, this will become a good source of income for the bank. Unless a scenario happens where the Kingfisher airline, due to some reasons or the other, is not able to pay back the interest amount and is also defaulted pretty much to not pay back the principal amount. This will lead to impediment in the income of the bank. Therefore, assets like these, assets which are non-performing or which compromises with the income of the bank are known as the non-performing assets. So, if a particular bank is not able to pay the principal or interest or both components of the loan, which is remained overdue because there will be certain time period. So after that time period, if for the next 90 days it is not able to pay back, the interest or the principal or both, then that loan, that asset of the bank will be considered as a non-performing asset. RBI has particularly or technically defined the NPAs as those loans or advances which ceases to generate the income for the bank, which eventually leads to bank run. It leads to degradation of the economy as well. Now, when we have understood this, let's see how India performs when it comes to non-performing asset. So you can see from this trend that India among the emerging economies holds the topmost position in having the highest amount of NPAs. And this problem grew since 2008. So essentially what happened, once the Indian economy liberalized from 1991 to 2007, it was seen that there was huge lending in the Indian market by the banks. So bank was providing a lot of loans to the people. But then because of the regional economic crisis, the global economic crisis like that happened in 2008, and some national economic crisis, these companies became the defaulter. They were not able, because they themselves were economically compromised, therefore they were not able to repay. And because they were not able to repay, a lot of the assets that were generated by the bank in this time got converted into NPAs. And therefore, India saw a huge problem of rising non-performing assets. How do we define, how do we classify the multiple NPAs? The categorization is done as such. First of all, the substandard assets. Substandard means whose quality have been degraded because they have sustained the classification of being an NPA for about 12 months or less, equal to 12 months or less, that is up to 1 year they have been qualified as the non-performing asset. Then their chances of recovery is getting into more doubtful stage, because the asset which remained in the above category, that is as a substandard asset, has retained its position for the next 1 year, that is for the next 12 months. This is now considered as a doubtful asset. And finally, what are considered as loss assets? Loss assets, first of all, they are identified by either the bank or by the RBI as those which are not completely written off, but still they have no chances or little to no chances of recovery. They are finally considered as loss assets. So having NPAs is alarming, but NPAs cannot be converted into or cannot be clearly called as loss asset. There is a particular classification criteria. So this is important from prelims point of view. I hope the topic of non-performing asset is clear. Now let's talk about a government initiative, PM KISAN. So what is the news over here? That the government has added 34 lakh beneficiaries in a special drive as the beneficiaries of PM Kisan Samman Nidhi. Why? Because the beneficiaries were seeing a dwindling fall in its enrollment, has been seen in a fall in the last few years. So let's talk about the act. This act was launched by the finance minister in the budget of 2019. So it got launched in 2019 as a central sector scheme. This is not a sponsored scheme, centrally sponsored scheme. It will be fully aided by the central government, fully controlled by the central government. Therefore, this is central sector scheme which aims to provide financial assistance or minimum income support to all the cultivable land holding farmers and their families across the country, subject to certain exclusion criteria. Now from this sentence only, we'll understand every provision that you need to know about this particular initiative. First of all, it provides financial assistance. So it provides financial assistance of 6,000 rupees per month. That is given in 3 installments. That is 2,000 in every 4 months. This will be the financial assistance that is given. It will be given in the form of direct benefit transfer, that is directly credited to the bank account. Bank accounts that are Aadhaar seeded. They need to be Aadhaar seeded. And that forms one among the problematic provisions as well, because what if a farmer who is, say, a tribal farmer, a very marginalized farmer, he is not literate as well, has not got any bank account, he is in much need of these 6,000 rupees, he will not be able to get once if he doesn't have a bank account, or if he has a bank account but it is not seeded with or linked with Aadhaar. So these are one of the limitations as well. Talking about the next part of the provision, who is eligible? The eligibility initially was to cater to all the farmers who are small and marginal farmers, that is people or the farmers who are having cultivable land less than 2 hectares. But now government has revamped and it has included all the cultivable land holding farmers that will be having the land. So here the landless farmers or the tenant farmers are excluded. They are again one among the most marginalized sections, and still they are not included because anybody who's not having cultivable land will not be included into it. This also excludes certain other kind of farmers. So for example, I am a farmer and I have leased my land to a tenant or to a landless farmer. Then it has not made detailed provision as to who will now be getting the benefits of PM Kisan, or whether any one of us would be getting benefit or not. So second provision was who is the beneficiary. So beneficiary is every farmer who's holding some cultivable land, and not just the farmer but a farmer family. What qualifies as a farmer family? Here, a farmer family is a person, is a family, a group of four or a group of people where there is one father, one mother and minor children. That classifies as a family in this particular scheme, and this is applicable across the country. And finally, it is also subjected to certain exclusion criteria. While it is available for all the farmers, yes, there are certain exclusions. Let's read those also in brief. So if you are not able to see what is written in here, you can always refer to the handout, but it is not that important. I'm just giving you categorizing so that you can have a sense of what is excluded. So first of all the institutional landholders, that is those who are having more than 100 hectares of land, these people are not allowed, or the institutional landholders are not allowed to be a part of PM Kisan. Second, families in which one or more of the following have got either a constitutional post, or they are a serving minister or a former minister, or they are retired officers, or they are pensioners, or also any person who has paid, kindly pay attention to it, any person who has paid income tax in the last assessment year, and anybody who's a professional, for example a chartered accountant, a doctor, a teacher, etc., they will also not be included under the PM Kisan. So now you know the eligibility very well. So we have already talked about the beneficiaries. Who will be identifying the beneficiary? It is under the state government domain to identify the beneficiaries and deliver it to central government so that they can be identified. And finally, about 11 crore families have been identified, beneficiaries have been identified so far. What are the issues with? First of all, that it excludes the landless farmers. So if anybody who's a tenant, who is a sharecropper, or who has leased out the land, they will not be eligible for having provisions of or having the benefits of the PM Kisan scheme. Next, it is rather an insufficient amount. It is just 5 to 8%, roughly 10% of what of average farmer income in India is. So it doesn't really support them. So first of all, it is very meager amount of support. And lastly, it also induces land fragmentation. Because here, in order to categorize themselves as one family, a family entity under the PM Kisan, they have to be dissociated with a huge family unit. So therefore now the families and the ownership of the land are getting divided, so that first of all they can put in document that they are holding less amount of land, and second, because they can classify themselves as a family. So now one entire family is getting broken up, and therefore so that they can be four beneficiaries instead of one. And finally, this is leading to fragmentation of the land in India, which was a huge agricultural problem, because of which commercialization is not taking place, because of use of machineries, advanced technologies is not possible in Indian land. So these are some of the issues of the PM Kisan as well. So we have finally read about all these topics. I hope you have enjoyed the session. There is one more question that I want to put forward and you think about it. When government is providing direct support, direct income support to the farmers, isn't it distortionary? Isn't it putting distortion in the market? Shouldn't it be classified in the amber box of WTO? It is actually classified as under the green box. So while I am not expecting you to answer the question on comment box, but you think about it and try to get into the correct answer so that you get more conceptual clarity on PM Kisan. So with this, I'll end the session. Thank you so much. Have a great day ahead.